Hi, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody feeling? I saw a lot of folks drinking coffee and rubbing eyes, so maybe we can wake you up this morning. As much as we can, Ylli, I think we should make this interactive, so we're going to talk for a little while, and then you're going to be prompted to ask questions. I have a tablet here to capture those, and so we would like to be able to answer, unless you have no questions about AI, in which case we can just keep talking.
We can talk about life.
So Ylli and I have known each other for a while, in particular since I was in office at CDAO. And I'd like to actually start this, Ylli, if we can, by you're telling the story about the origins of NSC AI, because that was actually a report that their team did that ended up legally binding me when I was in office. So I'd love to hear about how that got started.
Thanks, Greg. It's an honor to be on stage with you, and good morning, everybody, again. I like to tell this story, Craig, because now it feels like everybody's talking about AI.
Yep.
It feels like AI is everywhere. But in 2018, United States Congress thought to create a commission. I didn't know anything about commissions at that time. I was working in the Pentagon. I've been there for 12 years. The most famous commission, as you know, Craig, in our lifetime is probably 9/11 Commission.
Right.
And so I get a call from Eric Schmidt, the former Google CEO, who says, hey, Congress appointed me the chair of this commission, and I would like for you to help me set it up and run the process. Basically, why Congress created this commission was they saw two things happening in 2018 or coming their way. They were hearing from people like you from private sector. Number one is there's a big technology coming our way, and we're not prepared for this. And the second thing was China has already have a strategy. They're investing, and they have a top-down infrastructure and how they're going to go after, making China probably the world dominant AI player. So with that as a backdrop, Congress created the commission, and the mission that was given to us was pretty straightforward. What can Department of Defense and the intelligence community do more with AI? So again, just as a reminder, this is 2018-19. This is pre-ChatGPT era, where you had what we used to call it islands of hopes in departments and agencies.
Yeah.
People that were marginalized primarily, talking about this technology that's going to change the future of warfare. But by and large, we were still not preoccupied with this technology. And so, as you said, we dropped a big report in March of 2021 before ChatGPT. It's a 759-page document that it helped inform many of the legislations that came after that regarding AI, regarding chips, and hopefully gave you something to start with when you...
I confess I didn't read the whole 755-page document. I just read the executive summary.
So I want to turn the tables here and ask you, you come from private sector, you go to the Pentagon, you enter the building, you knew AI.
Yeah.
What was the state of AI at that point in DoD?
I think that's right. I think that you had these islands of places where AI was going to be successful and had been successful. You can give some really great examples of where it was hyper successful at that time, although I'm not sure folks realized it was AI. Google Translate, that's AI. In fact, it's the same transformer technology that underlies large language models. Vision, being able to aim your phone at something and it's telling you what it is. Or I remember quite clearly in 2017 being in China with my wife, and not reading any Chinese at all, and having to go shopping for milk because we had a new baby. And I held my phone up at all of the items in the grocery store, and it actually told me what it translated for me in real time. So there were these inklings that we were finally starting to get somewhere. And when I say finally starting to get somewhere, those goals that I just said had been goals for 60 years, right? No, longer than that, right? My whole career, but even before. And so at the time that I was asked to join CDAO, I was running machine learning for Lyft, which was really a fascinating job. And there we used AI to do really cool things. So imagine, just think about it for a moment. Think about rideshare. You have millions of people wanting rides all over the nation, and millions of people willing to drive all over the nation, or North America actually. And we had to optimize that mapping. But you had to optimize that mapping, and just think, for all of you here who have been in the military, think logistics as I'm saying this. We had to optimize that mapping for the whole day, not just for the next 10 minutes. Which meant, Ylli, if you were a driver and you were far from your home, and we knew you liked to work late, but you lived way over there, and also there was a concert getting out over there, then maybe we would match you with me, a rider, even though someone else would have been closer, right? And so we would have this highly optimized reinforcement learning algorithm designed to map out the whole day of this matching. So the work was cutting edge, and it was really high compute. Not quite as high compute as large language models.
Right. Yeah. And then you come to the Pentagon.
That was a really fascinating story. And you know, Ylli mentioned that he got started with NSCAI because of Eric Schmidt. I will say it's also Eric Schmidt's fault in some sense that I had the job as CDAO. Eric started this program called Schmidt Futures, and it was a philanthropy. I think is it still running?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a philanthropy wing that Schmidt Foundation funds. And one of the things that they did was try to find technologists who were willing to volunteer for the government. Just a little bit about my history. Before I was in industry, I was a professor at the Naval Postgraduate School. So I had spent a lot of years, 12 years, working for the military, and I was very mission-driven. And then I was very financially driven, so I was in industry for a while being financially driven. But I was feeling the yearning to be more mission-driven again. And so when they asked me, would you like to volunteer for the government, I said, sure, I'd love to. And the only thing I did for Schmidt Futures, it turned out to be a covert interview, but here's what they asked me. Could you come help us figure out who would be a good person to be the first CDAO? Yeah, you can see it happening already. I wasn't so wise as y'all are. So I was there. There was a VP from Microsoft. There was a VP from Google. I think there was there was folks from MITRE. MITRE and RAND were there. And we were all talking about what the CDAO would have to do in something like the Department of Defense. And I, being me, was not shy, told them my opinion, told them where their ideas were wrong, told them where I think they should do instead. And then about a week later, I got an email. This tears me up a little bit, so excuse me. But I got an email that said, the Deputy Secretary would like you to apply for this job. And I'm sure you share this view, Ylli. If you get an email that says something like that, your reaction has to be, why can't I do this, as opposed to why shouldn't I do this? And so my wife and I tried to figure out financially, because it was a big financial change, tried to figure out financially whether we could do it, and we decided we could, and I got 2 years being the CDAO, which was an amazing experience. Yeah. And then I show up, and the NSCAI bound my hands. Right. So thank you, Ylli.
I think first week we briefed you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
No, amazing story. And look, we are now in a different situation. I think Secretary Hegseth, as you know, just signed a number of memos, actually, on how to accelerate AI adoption. So, would be interested to hear about your views about the memos, and where do you think that will take the department next?
Well, so I think the department is right in pushing hard for AI. And when I was there, I took a slightly different tactic. And my tactic was to say there's a hierarchy of needs. At the bottom level of that hierarchy is high-quality data. And I'm saying this to you all now as well. If you don't have high-quality data, your AI is not going to be meaningful in the least. Because what is AI? AI is simply statistics at scale. You gather data from the past to build a model to predict the future. That's it. Oh, by the way, I hate to burst your bubble. There is no reasoning, there is no thinking, there is no cognition, there is no magic whatsoever. That's the one of the things that Ylli and I strongly agreed on, that there is no magic here. It's just a statistical technology. And as a statistical technology, if you have the right data and the right use case, sometimes it works. And even if you have the right data and the right use case, sometimes it doesn't work. So high quality data is the most important. Then on top of that, in our hierarchy of needs, you need analytics and metrics. And the reason I say analytics and metrics is a lot of metrics, you have to be able to measure the success of these tools. So you have to know whether or not this statistical tool being applied for your use case ends up being effective. And if you don't, and by the way, that's one thing I think we need to double down on, is evaluation techniques. As we're using these technologies, how are we evaluating whether this is useful or not? And let me just really caution y'all, and internally at Lockheed, I think they're doing a great job at this, but let me caution y'all that if you just simply believe the provider of the model, that the output is the right answer, you're in a lot of trouble. You, the user of the model, has to figure out, how can that model be helpful to me? And how do I evaluate whether it's getting it right or wrong? If you can't evaluate whether it's getting it right or wrong, then you have to rethink the situation. You have to rebuild and build a better experimental design. And then finally, on top of it is AI. Because you can't have AI without knowing whether you're getting the answer right or wrong. And you can't have AI without having high-quality data. And that was the main story I was pitching when ChatGPT came along. And I think you and I probably had a very similar experience. Then everybody wanted this thing. At first, nobody wanted this thing, and then everybody wanted this thing. And they wanted this thing because it was magic. It was going to solve all of their super hard problems. You heard the pitches. You use a large language model, and you never have to do work again. That was the story. And now, I think 3 years in, going on 3.5 years in, I think we now realize that it's useful sometimes, and sometimes it's just crazy and wrong, and it's really up to us to figure out how do we evaluate when and where. And I think that's where we are. And I think the push to continue to use this is great. I am super on board with that. I just want to add, we need to train our people on how to evaluate where and when this tool is going to be useful.
I agree. I would just add two things, because look, it's one thing to apply AI for Lyft and retail and all these things.
100%.
And as you know from your time in the Pentagon, it's another thing to adopt AI for military purposes.
100%.
And the rigor of testing and evaluating and all these things that I think the Pentagon does extremely well.
They do.
It's why it moves so slow. I mean, there's a reason for that. There are legal, ethical, war-related regulatory, things that why the department really moves much, much slower than the rest of the world, which sometimes is good, sometimes is bad, and I think that's why you get so much pushback of like, why can't we go faster, right?
Well, I think the real value of the Hegseth push in the last couple of, well, since he's been in office, but also, also in the last couple of days, is to push industry to help us all get better at figuring out where and when it can be useful, right? If industry has punted on the I'll be honest with you, this is where I think industry has been getting better, but could get better still. And over beer, I can tell you specific companies I think are doing, well or not well. Lockheed's doing great. Industry has kind of punted the evaluation. They produce these things which generate a bunch of strings. By the way, I call them large token models, not large language models, because they're applicable to anything that you can tokenize. And anything that can look like a Unicode token or a string of ones and zeros, this works really well at. And it generates them, but they leave to the end user the verification and validation. So that's, when has that ever happened? Imagine we built an F-35 and we shipped it and we said, okay, it's up to you to figure out whether it works well or not. Imagine we ship the Artemis capsule and we say, it's up to you to figure out whether it works well or not. We couldn't do that. That would not be doing our job. But in AI, for some reason, there's a comfort in being able to ship this model and put that little asterisk, which we all ignore, which basically says, this thing is wrong. When it makes a mistake, it's on you. Right? And we all ignore that piece, but I don't think you should. I think you should focus on that little star that says this is wrong, this is often wrong, this is sometimes wrong, whatever the wording is, and the onus of its being incorrect is on you. Take that seriously. Wrap that in a system where you are evaluating it, whether you're determining whether it's right or wrong, because the thing you ship to your customer, particularly in a defense environment, is up to you to be correct. This is the piece that I think we really need to double down on.
One thing I would add, Craig, is that I agree with you, is one question we constantly have to answer is AI for what? For DoD. Because as you know, like there's a lot of applicability there.
Sure.
And the level of risk also varies from how you apply AI for back office and how you apply AI for...
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so like the way I describe this is that there are 4 areas you can apply AI inside DoD. One is back office responsibilities.
Very different sense of evaluation.
Exactly. Super easy, low threat, cost cutting. Everybody loves it.
Great idea.
Do it for you, right?
Great idea.
I think
Still evaluate.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The second area that I think could happen right now is indications and warning. with DoD, with so many massive constellations of how we get imagery and data and all these things, of course AI is going to give you, faster, more predictable, moves, decision making.
Which are checked by the final decision maker absolutely agree.
Of course.
Absolutely agree.
So that is, I think, the category where you see a lot of activities right now. You saw it, what happened leading up to the war in Ukraine. You can see what's going on around Taiwan every day, what China is doing. So I think that's a really good area for this. The third area is, I think, in how I would use it, is decision making. Obviously, you were a principal inside the building. What you have asked probably your staff every day is, give me options. Give me options, give me options. What are the pros and cons of these options? These models can flesh out those options for you with pros and cons. It will be up to you to make the decision, but at the end of the day, it will give you more options that I can give you as an action officer.
So I know you have the fourth one to do, but let me caution on that one. I think that's 100% correct, but here's my caution. If you only focus on the options the model gives you, that model is only going to generate those options from the data it's seen. You've got to make sure that you're using that as a tool while simultaneously using your brain for options that the system doesn't come up with.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, like, I've spent 12 years in the Pentagon. There are so many experts inside the building that either cover functional domains or regional domains. They still know about that region more than any model, because they have the human relationship. We have operations in those countries. Our embassies have people in those countries. And so, of course, you will always put that human touch, or you can...
Well, you say that with an optimism that I don't share 100%.
Yeah, no.
I think most of us are overwhelmed in our job, and anything that looks like an easy button we will push. So it's really important as we're learning these tools to remind ourselves constantly that it's still, we can't, the onus of the output is still our responsibility.
I would say one thing we got to do there, Craig, is you got to retrain and reskill people.
Yes.
Because I think talent is critical.
I think human-machine teaming here is unbelievably important.
No, look, my personal opinion is the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to live in the human-machine team era.
I buy that story.
But you cannot you don't have humans to work with these machines if they don't know what they're looking at, they don't know how to use it, they're not trained for this.
100% agree.
And so, I mean, you and I remember when cyber became big, we all had to do cyber training. We all have to do cyber certificates every year. Otherwise, you lose CAC access.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so we have to move more aggressively in the training and reskilling. I need a plug to do here because we have launched a course with Coursera for national security Gen AI class online for people.
For upskilling.
Yep.
That's awesome.
7,000 people took the class in 6 months.
Let's tell them the name of the class.
It's in Coursera, Gen AI for national security.
Gen AI for national security. And it says SASP?
Yes.
Check it all out, guys. Check it all out. And what's the fourth area?
Fourth area is the most sensitive one, as you know, lethal autonomous weapon systems. This is the area that probably everybody outside of DoD and the defense world will jump when you mention AI and warfare. It's sensitive, it's delicate. There are many implications there that I think you have to take a closer look before you even adopt AI for these kind of missions. But that is the area when you talk to everybody that people talk about Skynet and Terminator because of that hype we have created with AI.
So here, I actually think we have really good policy infrastructure to handle this because well, I don't think it's changed since I've been in office, but when I was in office, the policy was the decision to use an autonomous system will always be made by a commander who is the responsible party. So that's actually not so bad. How many people have something like a self-driving car? It does a little bit of driving. Right. So it's your responsibility when you turn that on. So you make the decision to turn on self-driving. And you make the decision to either keep your hands close to the steering wheel or chill out and fall asleep. Right? And if there's an accident, if something goes wrong and you fell asleep, then it's on you. Right? And it's also on you if the system gets it wrong. Why? Because what you should have done is practice with it, try the car out, understand when and where it makes mistakes so that you understand its error envelope, and then you decide, given that error envelope, I feel confident in deploying this. I feel so confident that I take the legal responsibility if it does something wrong. And we have that very strong legal and policy constraints about these autonomous system interactions. there is always a deciding human being who is responsible for deciding to put that autonomous system online. I think that's really good. There's not a deciding human being who decides to generate text that you use when you write something. You're that deciding human being. So ironically, even though this is the most sensitive, it's also the one where we spent the most thought and put the most constraints around it. So I'm actually most optimistic about that.
But also, I mean, you have to acknowledge that things are moving extremely fast.
They are.
You see what's happening in Ukraine.
Yeah.
You see what happened in the Middle East, still happening. So, I mean, this is going to be that tension that the drive to move fast will also be like how fast we can refresh policies. What do those policies say? As you know, like the first policy on this issue was adopted 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And they didn't even have AI, I think, in the
autonomy.
policy.
It was just autonomy.
The one you updated, 3009.
Right.
Talks now about
Contributed to. The policy org did that. I just
AI.
contributed to it.
And it calls for meaningful human control. I think that's the formal language.
That's right.
They call.
That's right.
Let's talk about the future a little bit, Greg, I think,
Sure.
because I think one of the topics we have to address is like, how do you see this in the next 5 years? How this is going to evolve in the next 5 years?
That's a really interesting question. And, you know, last year, everybody said scale was the right answer. If you just scale these things, then you're going to get to artificial general intelligence. We're not, by the way. Statistics at scale. We might. I am not against the idea of being able to build artificially intelligent things. We might be able to do that, but I'm fairly confident larger and larger statistics isn't the answer, just by itself. And so scale is not the answer. I'm not sure what the answer is going to be, but what I would love to see is aggregation of smaller specific models. Models where this is really good for this and this is really good for this. I mean, I guess agentic AI is pushing in this direction where you, by the way, what's an agent? What is an agent? An agent simply is, if most models go from an input to an output, input to text, an agent goes from an input to a plan. That's all. It's just a plan. And that plan could call other agents, or it could call some programs, or it could give you an answer. But it's actually nothing cognitive. I just want to be clear. It doesn't really have agency. It's just the input, usually in text, to an output as a plan. And that's also trained statistically. And so if we get really good at an agent which builds plans, and we get really good at agents that do A, and agents that do B, and agents that do C, then we can sew them together into big systems. My word of caution is always, assume the first model has a 90% success rate. Assume the second model has a 90% success rate. Assume you have 5 models, all of which have a 90% success rate. What's your success rate? 0.45. So you've got to be really cautious to not believe that simply sewing them together gives you a magical solution. Be a good engineer about everything. What are you trying to achieve? How do you measure that you're going to achieve it? Do these tools achieve it? I think they're going to achieve it in many, many use cases, but I really caution you to be a good engineer about it.
No, I think
Is that message becoming clear?
I think you're right about this. I'll just add an international dimension to this, Craig, because I mean, this is what we do
right.
as SCSP is, I think in the next 5 years, really, we will be neck and neck in competition with China.
I think we're there now.
Yeah, but I think this is never going to end. I think this is constantly dynamic competition. If you look at 2 days ago, Microsoft came with a statement saying that, you know, in the rest of the world, the world is using Chinese source models.
Sure.
And so you can easily wake up in 2030 in which data, models, hardware, it's all being built or being routed through Beijing. And I think that's not the world we should end up with.
I agree with that.
We should not lose sight from that. While we are so focused on our domestic competition of which models is released fast, how many of those have been refreshed a year, I think China is doing what they did with 5G. If you remember, like they deployed Huawei globally. They heavily subsidized a domestic company to deploy their technology globally. And then I remember when I was at the White House in 2017, we wake up and I remember this map, the world was all red in the digital infrastructure of 5G built by Huawei. And it was like a couple of countries in blue, us, Australians, the Brits probably.
Yeah, the Five Eyes.
Right. And then I think you don't want to lose sight from that model in which like now they can build, since they have the digital infrastructure deployed globally, they can deploy software, they can deploy models, and everything else.
Well, let me keep with this challenging mentality. 100% agree that China's our pacing adversary. 100% agree with respect to AI, we have to engage and win that battle. Let me challenge you to say, it might not be about foundational models, it might not be about hardware. In lots of ways, that toothpaste is out of the tube. It might be about particular use cases. So right now, the battle seems to be about preventing them from getting A or preventing them from getting B. Let's talk about the chips, for example. I'd love your opinion on this, by the way, because I might be wrong on this completely. But if you think about chip growth, let me do it this way for y'all, is logarithmic. The power of the chip is logarithmic relative to the energy that you put into it, which means if they have last generation's chip, they still have 90% of the power, right? It doesn't, having last generation chip doesn't cripple them. It's not exponential. If it were exponential, last generation would be weak as can be. But since it's logarithmic, they're still having 90% of the power. So is the chip battle the right energy? I'm not sure, maybe, to some degree, but not fully. Is the algorithm battle the right energy? Probably not, unless we're going to stop the free flow of academic information, which I think is one of the powerhouses of the US, right? I think it's really going to be how do we leverage the capabilities that we have on particular use cases that are going to be the most valuable to us. Now that's harder though, right? Saying we want to restrict chips, it's one thing to grab. Saying that we want to restrict algorithms, it's one thing to grab. And we maybe want to do those things. I'm not saying don't do those things. But we should really be asking, in addition, what do we need to win at? What are the things that we have to be great at? And let's double down on those use cases, regardless of the tools or the chips.
Right. I think you're right, Craig. So I will just add a couple of things. Number one is, I think China is not playing to be second. I think if you look at their strategies,
sure.
The leadership statements, I think they have a clear roadmap where they want to be. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is not a new thing.
No, I think
They've been saying this for many years. They want to have everything made in China 2025. They want to be global AI leader 2030. They want to set global standards for S&T by 2035. So I think they've been driving on this train for a long time.
And their universities are phenomenal at this point.
They have incredible talent pool. They put enormous resources, and you can see, the emergence of so many good tech companies out of China, the adoption around the world. This is a serious competitor. This is not Soviet Union. Soviet Union, as you remember, was only a 100%. Competitor on a security space.
100% agree.
China is a full spectrum competitor. So that's number one. Number two, I would argue, is that AI adoption is going to be critical. Now, I'm with you there. But if you look at statistics, AI adoption in China is really high across all domains. Public sector, private sector, you name it. It ranges from 80 to 95%. In the United States, it's in the 50s, I think. And in Western Europe, it's even lower than that. And so we can end up in a situation in which right now what China is doing is how they're going to apply AI for agriculture, healthcare, all these things.
Yeah.
To your point about use cases, they can come up with next.
I agree with you. I agree. And that's what we need to be doubling down. Exactly. We need to be asking what are the domains where we need to win, exactly. And we need to be investing our energies there. I agree with that completely.
When people ask me what would change the American citizens' mind about AI, just because we're still on the fence about how this future is going to evolve, I say imagine a 60 Minutes show one night when they say, with the help of AI, we have unlocked this solution for Alzheimer or cancer or agriculture, or you name it, right? That will change, that we have been struggling for decades.
So I think part of the reticence to adopting AI, and maybe in the question period we can get some feedback to this, but part of the reticence to accepting AI is fear of job loss, right? And I just think that's wrong. I don't think you should fear losing. Jobs will change for sure, but I don't think you can fear losing your job. I think it's going to make you more efficient and better at your job if done correctly. And there's a lot of pressure to replace expensive senior people with cheap junior people and some AI. I think that's a fundamental mistake, and I think that's a fundamental mistake because there's no way that junior person can tell whether that asterisk, remember the asterisk I talked about before, the output of the model is correct or not. And if you can't tell whether the output of the model is correct or not, you might as well just randomly generate words, right? So you actually need an expert who can evaluate that output and be able to integrate it into the work for AI to be really successful. So I would love to change the conversation from doing away with expensive people, replacing it with cheap people and models. I would love to change the conversation to the efficiency gains that we can make by senior people being seriously up-leveled with these tools.
So Craig, I agree with you, but I would argue that for people...
He always says that, by the way. I agree with you, but I would argue that.
I'll just add.
Meaning I don't agree with you, and that's okay. We've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, I will add, Craig, that for people that are not in our line of business,
yeah,
or people that are outside of this hallway, AI is still a risk. Because everything they're hearing is, it's coming for your job, so that's
we should change that story.
People that are really worried about what's going to happen with their jobs. You know, you have the intelligence analysts worrying about, hey, if this model can replace me and 100 analysts, what's going to happen to me, whether in government or private sector? So that's one thing. You have people that are entering college now that are not sure if the computer science degree is going to give them a job from 4 years ago. You know, and I can give you hundreds of stories of young people in DC area, Uber drivers who told me like, hey, I enrolled into George Mason thinking that this AI, and he didn't know what I do for a living. I worry that AI is going to crush. So you have a lot of uncertainty, I feel, right now, that I think we should project some kind of confidence that we will be okay. AI will create a new set of jobs. And
AI will change computer science, but not replace computer science.
And
100%.
We need programs to retrain and reskill our people.
Totally agree with that.
That has to happen.
100% agree.
I will tell you, when we did the AI report with the commission, the most heartening project that I saw was this group of people that took coal miners from Pennsylvania and retrained
I remember that. I remember that.
to be coders.
To be web designers, yeah.
Yeah, and coders at that time.
Yeah.
And so we have to think like that. What's going to happen to people that actually are going to lose their jobs, but also what kind of new skills are emerging that universities have to adopt, because we still have the old system built for the industrial age that college has to be 4 years. I think that has to change going forward. That skills going in and going out of these colleges have to change, because this AI is really going to change the whole labor market.
You know, I'm old enough, I think you probably are too, Ylli, but I don't want to presuppose that, to remember when this was the same story about the internet. The internet was going to disrupt and change, and everybody was going to lose their job, and education has to radically change. And is it really education if people can just search it up on Google? How many people remember card catalogs? There's a couple. Oh, good. More than a couple of you. So I'm slightly more optimistic that we'll figure it out, because we've gone through this transition before, and that I'm getting the shut up sign. They're going like this. I'm slightly more optimistic than others, because we've gone through this before, and I think we're going to be okay. I think it's going to end up changing our jobs, but not replacing our jobs.
I agree with you. I just think you can get ahead of this.
We should get ahead of it. I agree with that.
Thinking proactively, what can Congress do? What can the administration do? Like, if you need to retrain people, you retrain people. Departments and agencies have been famous about retraining and reskilling labor because mission has changed.
Well, that's a great transition to the questions, and we're a little behind. But there's a coffee break, so if we stay a little bit later, it'll be okay. This one's been upvoted the most, so I'm going to start with this one. What strategies are you using to allow engineers and other professionals to properly evaluate AI outputs? Great question.
That's you.
That's me.
I'll defer this to you. You represent Lockheed.
You're not allowed to do that on stage. If I ask you a question, you got to answer. You can't just punt. This is the piece we have to get better at, but my response is to throw it back at you. It's your domain. It is your domain. How would you evaluate the output of it? So let's just talk about the text output from large language models for a moment. A good friend of mine, Cassie Kirsakoff, I think I got her name right, I always get it wrong. She was the first chief decision scientist for Google. Look her up on LinkedIn. She's amazing. She said something I really love, which is use AI under 2 conditions. One, you either don't care about errors, recommendations, ads, things like that, or 2, errors are easy to detect and correct. If errors are easy to detect and correct, you just go, okay, I got it wrong. My car's too close to the car in front of me, I'll put on the brake. My car's too close to the car next to me, I'll turn the steering wheel. Okay? Those 2 conditions. But large language models are neither of those 2 conditions. You do care about errors, and errors are really hard to detect and correct. So I would say, firstly, use these tools under conditions where you know how to evaluate them. I think they work best when there is external infrastructure that can do the evaluation for you. So I think about use cases where you're doing candidate generation, molecules, chemistry, biology, coding, where you're generating candidates that might be effective answers, but you have external evaluation techniques. Compilers, the code has to compile. The biology, it has to do something in the Petri dish. Chemistry, the molecule is supposed to have certain properties. So if you're using it to search the space for you, like when you mentioned about recommendations and so on, if you're using it to search the space for you, but you have external evaluation criteria, that's one of the best use cases. We have a use case at Lockheed where we're evaluating microelectronics. So there we have external criteria that determine whether the chip's going to work or not, and we use it to help us figure out whether we did the right validation on the inside. We can save 80% of the time in some use cases, but we know when it's right or when it's wrong. So if you can't tell when it's right or when it's wrong, I say that's not a good use case for using AI.
No, I think you absolutely, I agree, Craig. The one thing I would argue is also...
I told you. Every time.
I would just say that, most of the people right now that I talk to are stuck in helping me draft an email. So like what we're talking about here and your remarks are advanced users.
That's a good point.
We need to close the gap of like, hey, this tool is helping me summarize PDFs to really evaluating my input in science and technology and whatnot, right? So we have to have this like shift because everybody I talk to is using it for just simple things.
Really basic things. But there, what's the evaluating system for email or first draft generation or comment generation? What's the evaluating system? You in your brain.
Exactly.
So I'm sorry, there is no easy way out of this. If the system generates text for you, it is your responsibility to validate the text. There is no easy way out of that. That's why there's an asterisk in front of every one of these models. It's your job. Okay. This is the second most upvoted one. Do you worry that AI-driven decision-making will erode the foundation of leadership by denying experience and growth to the next generation? That's you.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you. I don't think so. I think, look, leaders evolve. Leaders need to be literate on this. I think you probably saw firsthand in the building from the moment you walked in and you walked out from the building, how much AI literacy got into the building.
Absolutely.
How 3 stars, 4 stars started caring about this. I just talked to one of the academies, military academies last week, how they're forming, flag officer courses around AI. So I think leaders will come equipped with this. It's not going to be, given that you walk into a job and you're doing what it is, and you have to learn it. I think because it's so mainstream now, everybody will have to have some kind of a basic knowledge of, what is AI, what kind of input this model has been given, what are my expectations as a leader that I'm going to get help from this AI, and then, work. I would imagine it will give you ability to move faster. Like, we spend a lot of time in the bureaucracy, writing papers, going through many editings and drafts. You can skip. Look, the way I talk about this is, when I started in the Pentagon, it took me 2 hours to build a memo just on the classification template. 2 hours. Microsoft finally gave us a template that had that pre-built up. So it saved me 2 hours of my life so I can get and start working on the content. I think AI will give you some kind of head start, But at the end of the day, as you said, you still have to do your work.
Yeah, but Ylli, that presupposes the following, that AI isn't going to replace a lot of the brain work or all of the brain
You
work.
have to do your job.
Okay, but I agree with that completely, but you can understand the question because a lot of the hype is, and you see, you know, companies that say we fired 800 of our people and we replaced them with AI. And so you can see if that's the case, then you're not going to be able to grow leaders. So we have to come to the agreement that you still have to do your job. I agree, but I think we need some broader work there.
There's a lot of, how would I would say, the narrative about job losses is dominant.
Yeah, and it's the wrong narrative, and I think we have to change that.
In this space,
yeah,
people are worried because what you get is, as you said, this company laid off 8,000, that other company laid. Nobody reads the next level down.
Which is they hired them all back.
Exactly.
Right.
Or these were like just numbers that companies bumped it up because of COVID, market change and whatnot, and now they're just rebalancing these things.
Look, your job's going to change. That's it. Your job's going to change. And I don't think it's changed that much yet, but it's going to change over the next 5 years. But I don't think it's going to replace the need for our brains. I just don't believe in AGI. I don't believe we're anywhere near close to AGI. So these things aren't going to reason for us at all. They're going to statistically generate text, and there's always that asterisk. The day that asterisk goes away, maybe we have to worry, but I don't see that going away anytime soon. Okay.
I think this year is going to be the reality of whether or not agentic AI works or not.
Well, let me ask the next question, then you can talk about exactly that. Is there an AI bubble? Hype versus reality. AI company infrastructure investment, restarting 3 Mile Island to power AI data centers. Those were examples.
Look, I'm not a market guy, to be honest with you, to analyze whether or not this is a bubble or not. But I would say underneath all of this infrastructure, there are real investments.
I agree.
And they're not just about AI, it's about the energy. And so these are physical, buildings that are being built throughout the country. And all the companies are looking for ways how to solve the energy issue that are arising because of AI. The next thing you're going to address probably is the grid issue. We need to upgrade the grid. If you're going to grow this exponentially, you need to have transmission networks throughout the country that you will be able to push this. And so I think there are real investments happening, regardless of AI.
But there were real investments in fiber too, and then we had a whole bunch of dark fiber, right? So it's not guaranteed just because we're investing, it'll end up.
But the energy, I think, is real. I think the hardware issue are real. I mean, you can see like the demand for hardware has really increased. And so there are some real investments happening. But, like you see that because the AI is such a mainstream topic right now, everything is related to AI, whether investments, the bubble, the future and everything else.
So I think it's inflated. I don't think it's a bubble in the sense that when the hype starts to recede, because it's already receding, right? Think about 2020, the beginning of 2023 and now, right? 3 years later. The hype is already starting to recede, but once it recedes, there's still going to be real value left there. And I would challenge anybody who owns this in your company or in your organization to not measure yourself just on wattage. What do I mean by that? Don't measure yourself just on number of tokens generated or number of models built or something like that, which seems to be the most common measure of our being an AI-first company. We're an AI-first organization because we have so many models, or we're an AI-first organization because we've generated so many tokens. I would challenge yourselves and challenge the owners of this in your organizations to ask, what value has it produced? How do we measure the value that this has produced? If we want to determine how much this is a bubble, that's the right way to do it. So I push this in Lockheed. We have lots of time saved. We have things that we've done that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. We're looking for really strong other productivity measures. But look for measures other than this is the number of tokens I generated and this is basically the number of watts I used. So that's one. And the other thing I would say, I find it really fascinating that we've sort of given up on the green world when it comes to electricity. And because we've decided AI is more important than being wise about power. And we're just pushing for power headlong. I think that's really fascinating. I think the nuclear energy thing is really fascinating. I think data centers in space is really fascinating. Like, there's a lot of really fascinating ideas. I think we should also ask ourselves, is the juice worth the squeeze? And so if we can switch our measures to value measures and not wattage measures, then we can be more choosy about how much electricity we actually need.
We do a lot of work on fusion energy, correct, just so you know, because I think Lawrence Livermore, National Ignition,
fusion would be great.
Demonstrated that this can work. We have a lot of companies now. In some ways, fusion reminds me of AI from 2017. There were two paths there. You know, there's the AI winter, and there's like maybe an AI will work.
And there was a fusion winter for a while.
Right. And so I think right now, AI is enabling fusion, actually. And so you have some really good companies.
Well, that's really fascinating.
A lot of investments going on. China, not to mention, this is doubling down on fusion. But I'm going to go back on the agentic AI piece.
Okay.
This is important. When you think about all the predictions about 2026, everybody says this is going to be the year of agentic AI. This will be maybe the year of like, or is this going to work? Because everything you see about agentic AI is that you have to delegate some kind of responsibility to an AI model to do a task for you. Everything I've tried so far, we're not there yet.
We're definitely not there yet.
And so we'll see if this year is going to be maybe that year, or we just manage expectation that we still have a lot of work to do on agentic AI.
Well, I just think you answered the following question. It seems like everyone is accepting the benefits of AI with little proof. What do you say to the skeptics in aerospace? Well, one is we're going to see this year. I also answered that question by saying, don't use measures like number of tokens. Use measures like actual value. When you're treated as experimental design, folks, don't treat it as something you're buying off the shelf. Ask yourself, what do I want this to achieve? And how can I measure whether it's successful? Don't just go, oh, I'm going to go get this thing and it's going to give me some output. That's not being a good scientist or a good engineer. And I'm in the trust but verify stage with respect to AI. I think there's going to be value. We've got to verify that's the case.
Right.
Okay.
And you and I talked about this before, but like, which category of we talked about this, like, the first category of people that adopt the latest technology are technologies, and then the second category are the crooks.
Yeah, but that's true. That's true.
Are we going to end up with, like, these models really emerging new kind of threat?
Maybe these models are best for disinformation and they're not great for actual information. That might be an end result. So we've got to really figure out how to validate this. What I find really interesting about this technology is it isn't just the technologists first and then the crooks. It was the technologists first. 1 minute left? Okay. It's not just the technologists first. It was the CEOs first, which I thought was really strange. It was leadership came right after the technologists. And so any executive education you could do, I think that would be really effective, because I think executives believe there's going to be cost savings without the concomitant evidence that there's going to be the cost savings they need. So how can executives better measure this and evaluate where the cost savings are likely? That would actually, I think, be a really useful course for you guys to be able to push for. All right, one more question, so I want to make it a good one. What should I study in school? I still believe computer science is the answer to that, but I'm biased. Okay, what other forms of AI are you using other than generative AI? I think that's an awesome question. And LLMs, generative AI and LLMs. I don't think you should think of the term AI to be equivalent with generative AI. I think that's a mistake. AI has been around for a while and it's been really effective for a long time. And now we've collapsed them all. So really AI comes in essentially 3 or 4, depending on how you divide it up, flavors. The first one is classification. Think about targeting. Is that a thing is that a school bus or a truck? Like, we have vision technologies for that. We have technologies that look at social media. We have all sentiment analysis is a type of classification. There's a whole bunch of tools out there to do different kinds of classification that are just super effective. And so those would be ones where you put in some input and the output is a class. The person's happy about the product. The person's sad about the product. That's a school bus. That's a truck, right? So I think that's one. Another type of AI is a regression. By the way, linear regression is AI. That's really, and modern AI is just multiple forms of regression tied together. But regression's really, really useful. I'm sure every one of you uses linear regression in your day-to-day life all the time. So for those of you who don't know, regression is an input to a real number as the output. That's really effective. We use those. Every dashboard that you build that projects your finances is AI, and you're using regression, and I think that's really great. And then we have recommendations, which is really a form of regression, but you put a threshold. Anything above this we will recommend. Anything below this number we won't recommend. And then you have generative AI. But generative AI is also a regression. What the output of generative AI is a distribution over all the words in your language. Each one of those is a regression. Each one of those is a real number. And you just choose the highest one, and that's the next token that you choose. So these technologies are all very related to one another, and it's really about how you apply them. So what's happened is the system as a whole generates lots of text, so it makes us feel like we're interacting with a real thing, a live machine, but it's not. It's just generating token by token by token. So and you get the last minute. Or
I think you covered everything.
Sorry, you have the last negative minute and 19 seconds.
Regression, yeah. Thanks for having me, Craig.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this conversation.
As always, man. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. You too, buddy.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you all.